Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. And in this episode, I have my dear friend Tania here. She's originally from Nicaragua and lives in Austria for now around 10 years or maybe a little bit less. And she moved to Austria, to Vienna, more precisely, to do her master thesis in Vienna. After that, she moved to Innsbruck to do her PhD. And now she's been living in Vienna again for a couple of months. And yes, Tanya, welcome to my podcast.
Yeah.
So, did I miss something important to mention in this introduction?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you for having me.
Before I continue, I would like to invite people to subscribe because it means a lot. And there will be many more interesting stories like this in the future. So let's start from kind of beginnings. When this idea for you to move abroad came and how?
So I think I thought about doing a master's ever since, basically all my life, because my dad was in Germany before even the Berlin Wall was thrown away, and I think he always had this vision of us studying in Germany, like me and my brother. Just because he really, I don't know, well, my dad is a very organized person, so I think he really loved the vision of what Germany was at the time. It was like 88 or 87 when he was there,
Where in Germany?
based in Berlin. And
Mhm.
anyways, point being that I think in my head I was always going to do a master's somewhere. The point was that in Latin America is a thing that if you want to study anything in Europe, like you're asked to have a job experience. And this was since I did my bachelor, like I knew that because I was looking already for like exchange programs. I did also a semester abroad during my bachelor, which is not so common in Nicaragua. And since then, I realized that there is this double standard for the demands that they do to Latin American students compared to what they ask of Europeans going abroad. And it was very like straightforward that, you needed at least 2 years of work before you did a master, for example. And I think in my head it was always Germany. But yeah, that didn't work
And
out.
how did it happen that you started your master's eventually in Austria?
Yeah, because I tried in Germany. So I literally did the 2 years of work in this environmental NGO where I was in Nicaragua. And after that, I applied to the DAAD, which is this German, what is the translation? It's like the German
Yes, very
academic.
famous one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I also don't know. Yeah, that's what it means
very
in.
long
Yeah,
name. But anyways,
DAAD, I guess it's official
yeah.
abbreviation.
TAAD, yeah. And they are the ones who offer like the big scholarships for going from Latin America to Germany. And at the time, I applied to something that, in retrospective, I think it made sense that it was fine that they didn't take me, but it was more like, what is it called? Renewable energy master. Because at the time, I really wanted to do something in water, but all of the masters offered through scholarships about water were really, really general. It was kind of like water management or water resources, but it was all like very, I don't know, like the pensums didn't look interesting to me. And so, like, yeah, I thought, okay, no, I want something more technical. And so I went for this renewable energy one because it was kind of like the one that looked more applied to me.
Mhm.
And anyways, they ended up not taking me because the feedback was that they wanted someone to have already experience on renewable energies, which is such a weird thing if you are applying for a master, because like, well, that's the experience I would get, no? But anyways, but I got disappointed for a few years and was like, okay, I don't apply to anything anymore. Because I think I tried a second time with something else that was just funding for a master and didn't have to do anything in particular. Like you didn't need to have one particular master. It was just like getting the funding for doing it. And that didn't work either. Yeah, and after a while, like my brother was already living here in Vienna with his family, and he was a bit like, yeah, why don't you try in Vienna? Because there is this university which does like natural resources and they should have something interesting for you. And that's when I look for the applied limnology master.
And the university is BOKU, right?
Yeah, BOKU. So that's
What is BOKU for?
I think it's the University of Natural Resources and Life Science or something like this. Used to be, I think, a university mostly for agriculture, and they still have a very strong area just for that, or like biotechnology nowadays. But yeah, they have this applied limnology master.
You did not apply with a scholarship, you just got accepted, but it was not, was it a complicated process?
Well, it was a little bit because they you needed to prove there was some weird requirement that I remember that was the hardest part to get because they needed a proof that in my country there was not a similar master offered and that therefore I needed to go abroad to do it.
This sounds familiar because I think I needed something similar, but to me, more in my head is more like that I needed a confirmation
Hmm.
that if I would try to do a PhD in Serbia with this degree, I would be allowed to do a PhD. That
Wow.
it's that my degree allows me to assess the PhD studies in my country or something like this.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but yeah,
either
it's
way,
a bureaucracy.
his bureaucracy is yeah being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the problem was then that in fact there was only one master in Nicaragua which did something with water. It was not even limnology. It was just like, again, like the very broad thing. It was kind of like, yeah, I think it was also like water management or something like this. And it was offered by the National University. My bachelor was somewhere else, so I had no connection with this university. And yeah, and at the time it was very difficult to contact anybody. And then they were like, what the fuck are you asking me to write? Because it was kind of like, yeah, it was just a weird question. I was like, can you please write me a letter that says that there is no other master in the country where I can possibly study limnology? And it was really weird. I don't remember how many emails I wrote. And then my mother worked at this university. So I ended up asking my mother if she could like contact someone. And so,
Nepotism.
yeah, unfortunately, because there was no other way. Because like people were just sending me to other people, no? Because they were like, what the fuck is this person asking me to do? And like they just, no, write to this other person, write to this other person. And then there was no, yeah. Anyways, finally, yeah, we had this very weird meeting where I brought already the written letter and this person, yeah, signed it and that was it. But yeah, it was a very long process to get this one letter. Everything else was kind of like the very standard things, like
Mhm.
like your grades and all of this stuff. But yeah, it was funny.
Okay, so then you arrived to Vienna. When was that?
Yeah,
What
it
year
was
was it?
2017. Yeah, in August.
Okay, more or less the same time as I started in 2016.
Yeah.
And what were your first impressions when you arrived in Vienna? What was the first thing you noticed in the city that was interesting to you or new?
Well, I had been already in Vienna because I came to visit my brother before. So
Okay,
I
what
think
was
I
the
was,
first impression from then?
yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it was, yeah, I wanted to say that because I think it was two very different impressions. When I came to visit
Mhm.
him, it was winter. So, and I remember
I
that
see.
particular winter was really, really heavy. Like there was a lot of snow everywhere, which nowadays I come to see that Vienna is not as snowy as I remember from that first trip. But that first trip was like a really winterland kind of situation. Winter wonderland, is that how it says? Yeah. Because it was very snowy, very cold. I remember being cold all the time. I think my first impression was like, I don't know if I could live here. And that was 2012, which of course back then I didn't imagine myself like living particularly in Vienna at the time. But yeah, so that was the first impression. And then I came in August, which was I think it's the hottest month in Vienna. So to me, it gave me this feeling of like, okay, I think I can handle it. My first impressions were more linked to the weather
Okay.
because I was there.
And what was the biggest cultural difference you noticed, like in a daily life?
A lot. So one thing is the language, because yeah, it was difficult to move around without knowing basic German. I mean, at the time, I knew a little bit, but it was really, really basic because I took some courses in Nicaragua when I was applying to go to Germany for the master. But to be honest, yeah, I did it in 2013 and then I never used it again. Yeah, I knew the basic, but was not even brave enough to use it. So, yeah, I think the language is one big difference. But then the second thing I could think of is like just how quiet everything was. Because I had the
In
feeling
Vienna, in the capital.
in Vienna, yeah. Like, of course, nowadays but it's a matter of like people wouldn't speak on the streets, cars don't honk in on the traffic, like the noises maybe from trams and like the regular passing of the cars, but not like I don't know. Like in Nicaragua is very loud. Like if you're in on the street, like, especially taxi drivers or buses are like honking all the time. So it's very, very loud. And then everybody's like talking because there are also a lot of like street vendors and, they are like
Mhm.
screaming whatever it is that you want to buy or whatever. It all felt very, very quiet, but in a sad way too, because I had the feeling that people would just not talk to each other. Like they would just not and not even like make eye contact with you or like it just felt very closed.
So you take it as a kind of negative thing, or like was it like a good impression or not so good impression?
We talk about this with a friend now that she's from India, and yeah, it's a very funny thing nowadays. Because I think now I see it as a positive thing, but at the time it shocked me and not in a good way.
Mm.
I felt like, no, I'm gonna be this like isolated person who is not gonna be able to talk to anyone, and I'm not gonna be able to even interact with anyone unless I'm with my family or something. And it really did feel like that for at least a year or so until I actually had people to talk to. Because it felt like I think if you add also the feeling of like, you're from another country, you don't speak the language, and then on top of that people are not like welcoming, then you definitely feel like you're in a isolated bubble. And it felt like that at least for a whole year until I slowly
Mm.
had friends, and then I was like, okay, now I can also meet with other people.
But was it more like you mentioned that people were not friendly? And I am just curious, was it maybe for the reason that you had a different perception of what friendly means? Or that people were objectively not friendly?
No, I definitely think it's a matter of perspective for sure. Because now, for
Mm.
example, which is very funny, when I moved back to Vienna now, you know how people within Austria, they talk about Viennese people being not so friendly. And I had the feeling that I had the most friendliest interactions ever on that one first week I was here. Because, like, I don't know, some old lady complimented me on something one day. The other day, like someone opened the door, or what is it called? Yeah, like they hold the door so that I could enter in the U-Bahn,
Mhm.
and like very small things that I was like, oh my God, like this is like super friendly. What is happening to Vienna? And for example, like these are very small things that, yeah, if you're coming from Nicaragua and you don't know anything else, yeah, you wouldn't see them. You wouldn't notice them because I feel like Austrians are actually very kind people and very nice people, mm, but they show it in very subtle ways if you're not friends with them. You know what I mean? Like if you're just a stranger
Mhm.
on the street, I also find it very nice that sometimes you drop something. My mom dropped like her hat one day in the oven, and
Mhm.
like someone really pick it up for her and like give it to her. So these small things that I feel like you wouldn't notice if you're coming recently from another country. Because in Nicaragua, people show love and affection or friendliness in a totally different way. Like They hug you, they give you kisses even if you don't know each other. I mean, on the cheek. And I don't know, they offer you food, they ask you if you've eaten. Like, there is totally different ways of showing.
For me, one of the very interesting things about Austria was when I was in St. Pölten in a supermarket. I will never know to pronounce this town's name, but I say it's St. Pölten. And I sneezed. And the guy told me Gesundheit, like a totally random guy from the supermarket. And I mean, if you don't understand German, you would never know that someone was just kind,
Yeah,
like telling you.
yeah.
But yes, this is something that I think you would never hear in Serbia. Like, even though like Serbian people also, I think a general that, you are very kind, you like very welcoming to, or especially people from abroad or from the side.
Mm.
But yeah, they would never tell you something like this
You would never say bless you?
just on this. No, on a totally random person on the street. No,
No?
I at least not that I know. This will be very strange.
Okay.
But you mentioned that your brother was living in Vienna before you moved. And how much, especially this first year before you started having your own friends, how much did it mean to you that you have at least one member or one part of your family living here
No,
in Austria?
it was a massive difference. To be honest, I wouldn't even be able to fully acknowledge what it means for people to come without knowing anyone, because I just didn't experience that. Um, yeah, I think having my brother here, I mean, he had his own issues at the time and his own, and already he had one kid at the time, and whatever comes with that, like already makes you very busy, so you feel like you don't want to like disturb them in a way. But already just knowing that I could like go to his house and come for coffee, or
Hmm.
have lunch together one on the Sundays or whatever, like this is a massive difference. Yes, because otherwise, I was also talking with another friend from India, and he also was saying how you move one day from saying goodbye to your friends who you've known all your life, and then the next day you're
Hmm.
sitting by yourself in a living room of a totally different country and a totally different context. And like this level of shock, I think it's very difficult to handle in general, but then without having anyone that it's way more difficult. My brother was here already for 5 years by then. So he also knew very well like all the processes with the visa and
Yeah,
all this work.
that's very important. Yeah.
And this was very helpful because
Hmm.
mm, it made it
Yeah.
easier within the difficulties of.
And the first friend you made in Austria, were they Austrians or internationals? Did you meet them at university or some other way?
Most of them were from the master, which I think helps a lot. And at the end, the ones that became very close, I think most of them were Austrians. There was one guy who was from the US who was also a very nice friend. I mean, he left already now, but in the master, we share the master with another group, which was doing a more international master. So we had also colleagues from Uganda and Kenya and Ethiopia, Nepal. Yeah, from many, many other countries. So I was also surrounded by international people, but at the end, the closest friends were ended up being Austrians actually.
Okay. And I suppose that the language you were speaking between each other was English.
Yeah. I think it has to do a lot with the fact that my German didn't improve so fast